In our last lesson, we looked at the emergence of humans in Africa and what happened when they left Africa and started to encounter some other areas, some other challenges. We looked at how we were modeling the ancient climate from the past and saw that actually things were sort of going through some ups and downs. So humans, our ancestors, were finding challenges as they emerged and left Africa and moved into new territories and encountered actually the relics of an earlier wave of our ancestry that had left Africa, which was Homo erectus. And Homo erectus moved out all into Asia and Europe and even the farthest reaches of these continents, and some stayed in Africa and became evolved into humans. So we looked at that already, and we saw how humans had encountered, especially in Europe and the Middle East, Neanderthals, one of these groups of Homo erectus that had adapted to different environmental factors and had made them physiologically more adapted to cold weather and to hunting meat and in fact hunting big game. They were smart, they communicated with one another, they created groups, some of which varied from place to place, but we were smart too, and we may very well have interbred and interacted with them when we encountered them. One of the things that prevented the Homo erectus expansion out of Africa, however, were big bodies of water. There's very little, I won't say no evidence, but very little evidence that Homo erectus was very good at traveling across bodies of water. So this would have been a challenge too far for some of these Homo erectus groups. There's no evidence that we have, and we're going to look at that today, that Homo erectus expanded into places like Australia or North or South America or the islands of the Pacific. They may have gotten to some places in the Mediterranean. They may have gotten to some of the islands we saw that they made it to the island of Java already in Indonesia. But Java was connected to the mainland at that time. But there are some islands that we're going to look at that they may have actually been able to have gotten to. The island of Flores, I mentioned Homo floresiensis in the last lesson. We're going to look at that as well. But one of the key things that I'd like you to keep in mind when we're talking about this chapter and humans' further expansion into the wider world is that we were talking about how humans were somewhat different because we were able to use our imagination in ways that our previous species or competitor species of Homo weren't able to. This helped us to make tools, design better protection for ourselves, keep us warm and safe, and happy. So our imaginations were being put to help us to survive and to populate, to increase our rate of reproduction and have bigger communities and expand even further. But how the Homo sapiens expansion differed from the earlier Homo erectus expansion is we didn't stop when we came to bodies of water. That's where that imagination comes in as well. So humans, us, when we left Africa, we moved into Europe, moved into Asia, we moved across Africa, but we didn't stop there, not like Homo erectus did. We went even further. And there's very clear evidence for us moving to populate the rest of the planet. And we're still doing that today. So we're part of this process of moving and expanding out. We're probably going to be on another planet. We've already been to our moon, and we're probably going to be on Mars in our lifetimes. So we're still in that process of expansion and moving beyond. And why is that? Because we can see in our mind's eye beyond the horizon. That body of water is, you can't see across it, but that's no longer a barrier to us because we can imagine what might be over there. We can build the tools to cross it and we can get there. So what we're going to look at, your learning objectives for this chapter are to look at some of the debates over the timing of this. What does archaeology tell us about how and when humans came to occupy Australia and the Americas? We'll look at things like the migration routes followed by the first humans and the evidence for that that moved into Australia and the Americas, and what happened when they got there. Well, there's been a lot, of discussion over the years, over the past 100 years about when humans first came to new territories. What did they do? Were they living peacefully in coexistence with that nature, or were they disrupting that natural cycle that they moved into? And so we'll look at the relationships between the human occupation of Australia and the Americas and see if that can link to any environmental changes that we might have brought on, like extinction of the large animals, the megafauna that we saw the Neanderthals hunting in Europe. But these megafauna existed across the world. So why don't we see things like mammoth, mastodon? Why are there no horses in North America before the European colonizers came across in the 16th century? So what happened to the megafauna? Was it humans' fault? What's the evidence for that? Are we to blame, or is it something else? So we'll look at these things in this chapter, and we'll look at the evidence for it. So come back for the next video and we'll get into the details.